Happy New Year, Cinephiles! For this episode, we are going to list our top 10 movies from 2020. Now, 2020 was a tough year, but as they say, the show must go on. So, for this episode, we are going to list our personal favorite movies that we've seen in 2020. Now, before we begin, if you are new to our channel, consider leaving a like and subscribing to us for weekly reviews of movies, TV shows, and video games.
Okay, so for our top 10 list, we are excluding movies that don't have a Philippine theatrical release because we live in the Philippines, and also movies whose streaming platforms are not available here in the Philippines. So that will include a lot of movies: Tenet, Mulan, Nomadland, Minari, First Cow, One Night in Miami, Palm Springs, Promising Young Woman. Don't expect that in our list, but you know, those are still great films that are worthy of consideration. So Phil, why don't you kick it off with your number 10 on your list?
Yeah, to start off, since we live in the Philippines, I'm going to start with the Filipino movie, Cleaners. This is a movie that I've seen on Pista ng Pelikulang Pilipino, and this is just awesome. It just gave me a lot of nostalgia vibes. It gave me longing for my high school days. It's also a movie that's very uniquely made, and it also has a lot to say about the current state of political affairs and lessons for our current generation. Now, Kevin, what's your number 10 pick?
Okay, I just want to say I completely forgot about Cleaners because I counted that as a 2018 release. But you know, I have made my list, so I'm sticking with it. I'm going for number 10. I know you're kind of mixed with this movie, but the only superhero movie in this list is The Old Guard. We have a female director and led by Charlize Theron, and I just love this movie because it offered something new to the superhero genre, and you know, one may give a contention that the action sequences are not as bombastic or as many as you would like to, but I like that the approach here is more of a character-driven story. I really appreciate of getting into the heads of these immortals, and honestly, I am really looking forward to more sequels to come. This is the first movie that Netflix made a point that it can produce superhero movies which are quality films. So that is my number 10.
Yeah, Charlize Theron is such a badass. Okay, for my number 9 pick, this is going to come as a surprise to you because I've spoke to you about this movie after I watched it. Initially, I didn't really get the point of this movie, but I'm thinking of ending things. Now, did I understand this movie? Probably not. This movie was all over the place for me. But this film just never left my mind. It just has this very surreal vibe all throughout. The direction is amazing. Charlie Kaufman's brain is something that I would really like to dissect someday because his films is just really mind-boggling at times, but at the same time, you just can't stop watching it. So that was my number 9 pick.
So did you give that movie a rewatch?
I actually did, and I still didn't understand a thing.
But obviously you appreciate it
It just
more.
really stuck with me.
Okay, number 9, I hope this one makes your list, but if you just want a movie that's going to make you laugh and face you this harsh reality's life in a hyper-realist and in such a crass way, go watch Borat's subsequent movie film. 2020 is also the year that I first saw the first Borat movie, so I really had a blast watching this movie. Congrats again to Maria Bakalova because she was gaining momentum this coming Oscar season. Comedic actresses are not given much recognition these days, and Sacha Baron Cohen, he's still unhinged and he's still unfiltered in this role. All the political commentaries, what's wrong in our society, and to have a character that personify all those negative things, it's just like you're being placed in front of the mirror. So yeah.
Yeah, Borat is definitely a fun watch, and that is actually some of my honorable mentions. Unfortunately, it just didn't make my cut. But for my number 8 film, it's a documentary from Netflix. It's titled David Attenborough, A Life on Our Planet. Now, I've only seen this prior to the new year, but this was released way back in October of 2020. And this is a documentary about the perspective of a 92-year-old explorer or documentary documentary filmmaker, his perspective on how much the world has changed. And he also shows that there is so much to be done in order to address climate change. This is just an eye-opening documentary film for me. I hope that many people watch this. It reminded me a lot of The Unconventional Truth because during that time, that was an eye-opening documentary. The difference of this documentary is it has a personal touch because you're seeing the world change through the eyes of this 92-year-old person who has lived a full life, and it's just a really, really great documentary for me.
You know, I'm asking myself why I have only heard that movie, that documentary now. It's crazy because even a cinephile like me, I still miss some of the great offerings out there. So let's proceed with my number 8. This is a movie that I did not expect will come out in my top 10 list because this is one of the most gross movie that I've seen. And normally when I watch movies that are catering to gore, I want to bathe myself. I feel so disgusted with myself. But this movie has a lot of loud truths in it. This movie is The Platform, a Spanish thriller, or El Helio. We watched this on the midst of pandemic, but what I loved about this movie is it has a high concept thriller that it's really gripping, and above that there's a very ripe commentary that it's not just about dog eat dog world, how the rich pays on the poor, but it's also examines on the behavior of the poor people, how they devour each other. And I like that there's a note of hope towards the end, so it's not just a tragic and harrowing experience, and the acting is great here. I just can't forget about this movie, though I have no plans of watching this movie anytime soon.
Yeah, also, I can't watch that movie for a second time. The Platform, it's such a great movie. It's in my honorable mentions, actually. I love that we have different movies here in this list. So, viewers, you're really in for a treat. There's a lot of suggestions here. For the 7th movie on my list, it's Mank, directed by David Fincher. This is one of the frontrunners in the Oscar season. It's shot entirely in black and white about the story of Herman Mankiewicz, one of the writers for Citizen Kane. And this is just extremely well directed. It's extremely well acted. The dialogue for me is sharp. And although this might become inaccessible to some, as someone who's seen Citizen Kane, I really had a blast with this movie. So that's my number 7th movie.
Mank won't make on my list if you've seen our review because I'm kind of mixed with that movie because of my personal lack of fascination for that. But someday I'm going to give it a try. But for now, it's not making the top 10. Number 7, I also have another documentary, one of the few documentaries that I've seen this year, American Murder, The Family Next Door. I feel like this Netflix film is the best summation of what happened here. It gives perspective for the victim here, Shannon Watts, what a terrible tragedy indeed in the advent of social media where everyone is putting on a mask, putting on a facade of a happy life. If you want to, again, see how sociopaths work in real life, those real life footages really crawl through my skin. Even if you don't witness the actual horrific act here, it's just unbelievable all throughout, and the pacing is credible, the editing is excellent.
Another movie from my honorable mentions. Now for my number 6, this is my favorite horror movie from last year. It's His House. It's showing on Netflix. This horror movie is just really for me because I am someone who just really hates cheap jump scares. While there are still a few musical cues on jump scares in this movie, the main reason why I love horror so much is because it can tell a compelling story that will add to the creepy vibe of the entire movie. And this movie highlights the struggles of people from Africa, specifically South Sudan, which is really ravaged by war and lawlessness. And the visual imagery in this horror movie is just outstanding to watch. The director for this movie was a first-time director, and I am so excited for the upcoming films of this director.
Yes, I'm so glad you finally watched that movie. That movie is also making my top 10. It's at number 4. This is my favorite horror movie of the year. It's hard to please me when it comes to horror because, like like you, I hate
Yeah.
jump scares. This one also has, but it's just so tastefully done. The cinematography is great, even the visual effects. There's depth to the story. This is a horror
Yeah,
that
so
has so
much.
many layers, that visually, something you can feel emotionally and spiritually, the plight of these immigrants, and to see that discrimination also playing a factor. It doesn't matter if you're in a new place, sometimes you can be discriminated by people of your own color. It's about
Mm.
moving forward and learning that this ghosts stay within you. This abstract house that you have for yourself, that is something that will keep me up at night. I love this movie. So I'm going to proceed now with my number 6. Phil, I hope you still remember this movie. It just sucks that this was classified as a TV movie and it's eligible for Emmys, and it's probably forgotten by now because Hugh Jackman just gave an excellent performance here. I'm talking about Bad
Yeah.
Education, an HBO movie. Let's just say that this one gives a good examination of the greed that's ingrained in the society, in the culture of a company, like how it's easy to turn a blind eye, and to see this character study played by Hugh Jackman as he plays this principal who just keeps on telling lies, that he starts believing himself like this delusional and sociopathic character. This movie is one of the infuriating movies that you'll see. This one happens in real life, and I think that the screenplay of this movie is great.
Yeah, I think we are on the part of our top 10 where we're gonna have the same movies now because Bad Education is my number 5.
Yay!
I agree that it's sad that they are forgetting the great performance here by Hugh Jackman because I think it's going to suffer because this was released earlier this year. But Bad Education was an amazing film. I agree, the screenplay for this film was amazing. The corruption that's portrayed in this movie, in a school nonetheless, that happened in real life, is just mind-boggling to me that that could happen at an educational institution. That's my top 5, Kevin.
Okay, so I think I missed my number 5. So I'm going to
Yeah.
backtrack a bit. This is another horror movie that I'm glad I got to see in the cinema because I was on the edge of my seat while watching this movie. I'm talking about Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man. When they try to remake this universal horror classics, they usually fail. But this is one of the first testament that universal horror monsters can be adapted into modern day and to bring such commentary, because this movie is just not about the scares, though there are some scares and they are still tastefully done. It's more about the Me Too movement that's very apparent now, and the toxic masculinity. I'm just mesmerized by the great performance of Elizabeth Moss. In fact, after watching this movie, I did watch The Handmaid's Tale. She was great in it, and to see her character range, because every nerve of her body is just shivering with fear. You're going to buy every scene. And Lee Whannell, from his work in Upgrade, he really utilizes the stillness and the silence in this movie.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a movie that I haven't watched up until now, and I hope to watch this movie because, as you know, I love horror films and thrillers, so I'm definitely going to watch this. Now, I'm going to my top 4 movie. My top 4 movie is a movie by Spike Lee, The Five Bloods. Now, this movie features the late Chadwick Boseman, and he was great in this role, but really, the star of this movie is Delroy Lindo, and I am so glad that he is having a lot of Oscar buzz for that performance. Spike Lee, as we all know, when he makes a movie, there is always some social commentary about race in his films, especially when it comes to war and what the US troops did in Vietnam. I hope this movie gets a nomination for Best Picture.
I felt bad that that movie didn't make my cut. I feel like the pacing is off a bit in the first half, but I should give it a rewatch someday. Okay, I'm now moving to number 3. Wow, things are moving fast. I hope you got to watch this.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite movies this year, Amazon Prime Video, Sound of Metal. I was just mesmerized by Riz Ahmed's performance. This is a type of performance that really relies on nuance and inner turmoil, to see the character growth of a person who's losing his hearing and he's in the stage of denial. He finds himself not belonging in either of those worlds, and man, the sound design of this movie, I still wish that I've seen this in a Dolby Theater. It will really take you to places, because one of the ideas of this movie is deafness is not silence. So the movie has to be creative in showing what does an actual deaf person will hear. So it really feels immersive, and then by the end of it, you really felt that you became the character. It left me stunned.
Okay, Sound of Metal, that seems like a really interesting movie, and I hope I get to watch it immediately. But I am going to my number 3 pick now, Pixar's Soul. Now, this is a movie that we've recently reviewed. It was released during Christmas time. What can I say? It's a top tier Pixar film, and although the approach is a bit similar to Inside Out, but it has the same director, it's still really affecting regardless, especially for us millennials who are trying to pursue our respective passions, and in the pursuit of that, forgetting the joys of the small things in life. This movie just really spoke a lot to me, and I'm glad that I got to watch this before the new year, because this new year I'm going to turn over a new leaf. I am going to appreciate more everything. I am going to be a much more happy person, and that's thanks to this movie.
Fittingly, it's my number 2. I keep on telling people that you gotta watch this movie because everybody had a down year in 2020. The animation, like I need to remind you, the musical scoring, it's just heavenly and it feels so cathartic. This movie took me to a roller coaster of emotions and all the life lessons that you're gonna learn, and will probably learn more as you try to revisit this movie in the years to come. Soul is truly a masterpiece for me. It really spoke to me as an adult. This is one of the movies that I will cherish, and I really felt bad that Disney Plus is not yet available here because I would definitely go watch this movie multiple times.
And I think that my number 2 is probably your number 1, and that's The Trial of the Chicago 7. From the characters to the villain that is just so vile that you're just gonna really hate that villain. And this is based upon a true story, and it's just amazing and infuriating at the same time, because we see that the justice system was against these people. This movie has such great performances from the likes of Sacha Baron Cohen and Mark Rylance and the other actors. This movie, like many movies in this list, has a lot to say about society, about justice. This is a must-watch for all cinephiles out there.
Yeah, that is clearly my number 1, and I've been really loud and clear in my social media that this is my favorite movie of the year thus far. Though I am really scared because your top 1 list is not in my top 10, so I'm curious to know what that is, or I might have missed something. Going back, this movie really just captured the political unrest that we have right now in our government. These protests, they are part of our civil rights, and the movie is unbiased also because it was able to show both the positive and negative side of this protest. Some of my cinephile friends admittedly didn't like this because this movie has, they say, too much moral righteousness, and maybe it's bit on reliant on white mansplaining. But I don't really see color when it comes to this, no matter how they say that this cast is mostly white people, because this movie has full of idealism, that intellectual orgasm that really got me witnessing this courtroom drama. Aaron Sorkin really outdid himself here, since A Few Good Men, and the actors here, I wish everyone get a nomination, but they're all fighting for the best supporting actor spot. As you said, Mark Rylance, Frank Langella, Sacha Baron Cohen. Go see this movie, give it a chance, because it might be a slow at the first, but this movie is really rewarding.
And now, for my number 1 pick, actually, Kevin, I've seen Sound of Metal, and it's my favorite movie from and it's my favorite movie from 2020, because
you got me there.
Man, I love that we have the same top 3, by the way.
Okay.
But first off, Riz Ahmed, he is my best actor pick for 2020. I don't know if he's gonna get a nomination. I don't know if he's gonna win, but that is the best performance that I've seen. It's practically perfect in every way. This movie was the closest thing that I've seen to an A24 movie in 2020, because I haven't seen Minari or any other A24 films for that matter. So this movie has those kinds of vibes that it's like you're a fly in the wall just watching these people live their lives. Everything feels really realistic. The acting feels really authentic. So The Sound of Metal, this movie was really a pleasant surprise for me. I'm so happy that you recommended this movie to me and you really forced me to watch this. So I did, and I loved it. It's my number 1, Kevin.
truly 2020 is still a great year for movies. Regardless of the pandemic season, streaming movies took flight. So that's it for our top 10 movies of 2020. Usually we have reviews for this movie, so I'll be putting down the links on the description box below. How about you guys? We want to know your top 10 list or top 5, so put them on the comment sections.
And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to us for weekly reviews of movies, TV shows, and video games. And as always guys, Happy New Year and we'll see you on the next one. Bye bye!